Do you have questions?
Okay. I heard you explaining about how what we perceive is being mapped in from like an object, say, like a table. The table exists in space, but what we're perceiving when we see a table is actually that mapping into our mind. We're seeing what's in our mind, basically. Is that all our perceptions are just what we're seeing in our mind?
Yes, obviously, yes.
So the whole universe just kind of like, it's really not real as far as the only reality is infinite and all that. Okay, but like the whole physical universe I've been experiencing all these years, none of it has been real.
Well, it depends. It depends what we call real. If what you mean by real is existing independently from mind, then I think this question, whether the universe is real or not, can be answered by saying, yes, it exists independently from mind. At least it exists independently from each human mind. Because otherwise we have to deny consciousness and mindness to other people. You see what I mean? If we are speaking together, this relation is based upon the implicit assumption that you are hearing my words. Right? I am not denying you consciousness, nor am I denying you mindness, in other words, that you have a mind through which my words can be heard. Right? So then, it means also that I agree that there are things that you perceive that are not perceived through my mind. Actually, in this moment, everything you are perceiving is not perceived through my mind, and conversely, everything I am perceiving is not perceived through your mind. Right? Since we have seen that whatever we perceive is dependent upon the position we occupy in space, etc. Right? So not two mind contents are similar. They are always different. And they are not different only with some respect. They are utterly different. They are absolutely different. So, it implies, if I acknowledge your mindness and your consciousness, it implies that what I perceive through my mind is not all there is. In other words, it implies that there is existence independently from my mind. Similarly, there is existence independently from your mind. You see? Now, so that's important to acknowledge. Otherwise, we fall into the trap of solipsism. Now, another question is there existence independently from any mind? You see, how can we answer this question? The answer is we can't. Neither can we deny, neither can we claim that there is not existence independently from mind. We cannot really solve this, answer this question. It is unanswerable. So because it cannot be answered, the rational position is to be open to both possibilities. But then, if there is only one reality, and then the reality of mind and the reality of whatever is it that has some existence independently from all minds, potentially, is going to be the same reality.
You lost me now.
Oh.
You lost me.
If you see, we were left with two possibilities. Either there is, let's say, to put it more clearly perhaps and more bluntly, whether there is a universe out there existing independently from minds or not. Right? That's the question. Does the flower exist only as a projection in my mind, or does it have an existence independently from all minds? Because we have seen that it doesn't have an existence independently from your mind, because if you go out, you don't see the flower, but the rest of us, we see it. So it still exists for us, right? So, but does it have existence independently from all mind? We cannot say yes or no answering this question. So that's the first step. The first step is we have to be open to both possibilities. But the second step is to prove that it doesn't matter. So it's a little nerdy, so I'm not sure I'm going to go into it. I leave it for you as a homework. But I give you a hint. and the hint is that it doesn't matter, because the reality in both cases, if there is only one reality, consciousness is this reality. So consciousness is the reality of the mind and also the reality of this external world. So at the end of the day, no matter which possibility we consider, it's all consciousness. So for all practical purposes, that which matters is that there is only one reality. It's all consciousness.
That's better.
Hey, Francis. I'm remembering back to the first week of the retreat when we were doing the yoga and we were moving our heads. With my eyes closed and moving, any part of my body, I do have the sense that I'm not linked to that, except for when I move my head. It provides that sense of orientation. And I'm wondering what I could do, what kind of exercises or investigation I can do to help loosen that sense of being connected to the orientation of the head.
Well, you are connected to the orientation of the head in that sense that the orientation of the head reveals itself to you. So it reveals itself to you by the external sensor, the eyes, so the content of the images you perceive, and also through the bodily sensations of your muscles that give you feedback regarding the posture of your body and the position of your head in space. So you get information about the position of the head, definitely. That doesn't mean you are the head. That doesn't mean you are, as consciousness, are in the head.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, it doesn't mean that the reality that perceives all these sensations is localized in the head or anywhere else. And that's a theory, but the exercise is much more practical. It is about, if I feel that I am in the head, the feeling of being in the head is appearing to me, right? So, is the me to whom the feeling being in the head appears in the head? You see? And what is the evidence that the me to whom the feeling of being in the head appears is in the head?
Okay.
For instance, you're watching a movie and it's New York City in 1985. So what is appearing to you? What is appearing to you?
Oh, you're taking notes. Go for it.
What is appearing to you is New York City in 1985. But it doesn't mean that you are in New York City and that it is 1985. You see? There is a confusion here that we make. That we assume that which perceives is localized in that which is perceived. Not only localized in space, but also localized in time, which is more, because that which is perceived is obviously localized in time, aging, right? But that doesn't tell us that that which perceives is localized in time. First of all, because if we don't know that it is localized in space, how can we establish that something which is not localized in space is localized in time?
So the head turning exercise.
What the head turning exercise does is that it makes it clear that we are localizing ourselves in the head. You see, it reveals it. We don't need this exercise to reveal it. But this exercise is good as a benchmark first as a test as a revealing exercise. It reveals that we are localizing ourselves in the head, that we are identifying with the head. And then it is a test of our disidentification from the head. You see? And it is also a tool to disidentify from the head. So it fulfills its three purposes. First, to realize, oh, I didn't realize, but I am localized in the head.
So the first part is recognizing, okay, I'm thinking that I'm in this head. Yeah.
It's not that I am thinking. It's rather that I am feeling.
Feeling, okay. Okay.
It's different.
Mm-hmm.
I am feeling that as the head moves, I'm feeling I'm moving. For those who don't know the exercise is as follows. We move, for instance, the first finger, left and right. And we are aware with the eyes closed that we are not moving. The finger is moving, but the feeling we have is I'm not moving. And then, in sync with the finger, we move the head left to right, right to left. And then the feeling that may come up is, oh, now I am moving. You see? So if the feeling that comes up then is now I am moving, a priori there is no reason for an abrupt change in the feeling. Because after all, it's a different part of the body which is moving. So the only possible explanation is that we are not identifying with the finger, and that we are identifying with the head, with the sensations, and so that reveals first this identification. And now, the goal of the exercise is to get rid of this identification by paying more attention to the transition from I'm not moving to, oh, now I am moving. And to try to maintain throughout this transition the feeling I'm not moving. That the movement is appearing in me. Yes, I'm not moving. And then we don't even to use the help of moving the head, or moving the hand, we just move the head, and the feeling I'm not moving. And so that it's a little awkward to do that, and we shouldn't abuse the prescription. I mean, 5 minutes a day is sufficient.
Not when I'm driving.
But what is interesting is that over a period of months, one day we noticed, without doing anything, that our relation to the external world has changed. And for instance, we are moving, we are walking, the body is walking, but I'm not walking. The body is walking. The body walking is no different from the cars moving, if you will. It's all part of the universe, universing. But I am not moving. So that's the experience that it leads to.
Okay, thank you.
These are very simple things. There is nothing spooky about it. There is nothing new agey about it. It's just a kind of a reprogramming of the way we perceive the world and the body. That's.
Francis, there are some techniques that do kind of the opposite. Like they try to bring these to embody the body. So to be really into, for some people that are disconnected from sensations or from emotions. Do you have something to say about that?
There are so many techniques, and you have to tell me first what is the goal. What is it that
to be aware,
that they try to achieve?
be aware of the body and the ways it can do things more efficiently in terms of not hurting or activities or dancing or...
That's good. It's efficient to that's what you do if you play sports. You know, if you hopefully you're aware, if you play tennis, you're aware of your body and most importantly of the ball. So yes, and because then the goal is to play tennis, right?
Yes.
That's not the goal here. You see, that's why it all depends on what the goal is. There are many things you can do, you know, many goals you can have. To play the piano, to play tennis, to play golf, to dance, and each endeavor has its own technique, you know, to solve mathematical equations, to drive it, to fly an airplane, to drive a tank.
So can we say that we can embody the body as just consciousness and not as the personal self?
We don't, as consciousness, we don't embody the body, we unconsciousness the body.
Thank you.
You see what I mean? An embodiment is a catastrophe. A disembodiment is liberation.
Hi, Francis. About the last question, you said to catch the transition during the movement from I'm not moving to I'm moving when that happens.
Well, that's a part of the exercise that that we have to focus on, you know, to look at the important moment. It's like if you play tennis, guess what the important moment is?
When you're
It's when the racket hits the ball, right? Because that's all depends on that. You know, you can have the perfect movement here, but if you're awkward hitting the ball, but if you can have a lousy movement here, but if you are perfect at the moment you hit the ball. So the efficiency of the movement enables you to. So a good technique is to focus, you know, at what is important. So in this exercise, the important moment is this transition. What happens there?
I wanted to clarify with you something that I've been doing during the yoga. When I have the sense of I am here or localized, I use this thought of where is that being seen from, and of course to that I don't get an answer. It does seem to have some strange effect of this localization seems to do something to it. One thing that I've been doing is to shift the perspective as if I'm seeing from another location, from the top or the side. And I was just wondering if this is useful.
I don't think so, because then what you are doing, you are simply creating an imagination. It's much simpler to see where, in the current situation, where is the perceiver, without creating a new situation. In the current context, where is the perceiver? You see, the fact that that we see from a point of view, or from a viewpoint, which is localized in space, is because the camera is localized in space, and it's obvious that it is. But the fact that the camera is localized in space doesn't imply that the camera person is localized in space, or that the viewer of the images, let's be more precise, that the viewer of the images is localized where the camera is. So the viewer of the images here is a reality that perceives. It perceives through the body-mind apparatus, but the images and all the information which is perceived through the body-mind apparatus doesn't give us any information regarding who the perceiver is, any more than the images that are displayed on the TV screen don't give us any information on the viewer of the images. I know that now with smart TVs they get all the information about you, you know. That's a different story.
So during the exercise, when this is checked, that where is the localization itself, the sensation of localization itself is being perceived, it shifts something, and then I find myself back, and from what I'm hearing from you is that itself is enough to keep repeating that inquiry.
Say that again.
So each time I see the localization, and I question where the localization itself is appearing in, it changes something.
Yeah, because it unglues you from being here, you know, and you don't want to reglue yourself with someone on the ceiling. Remain unglued. You see what I mean?
I find myself
understand that your unglueness is your natural position. It's your default position. And accept it. And unless proven otherwise. You see what I mean? But good luck with proving otherwise. And you just accept it. And then it is not that things are going to change in that which is seen. Not right away, at least.
Thank you.
The change doesn't affect what we perceive. It affects what we believe to be, where we believe to be. You know, what we believe to be and where we believe to be. And also when we believe to be. So it affects all of that. But not that which we see. Eventually, the change in what we believe to be, where we believe to be, when we believe to be, is going to have implications also in the world, in other words, in that which we see, perceive, etc. But it's going to be down the road, but immediately it's just moving from the known to the knower.
I have two questions, Francis. My first question is, I heard a lot, they say the mind cannot understand or grasp that consciousness. So if it's true, then what I'm doing here? If my mind can grasp it or understand it, so...
That's the bad news.
That's about what?
That's the bad news. The mind cannot grasp consciousness.
Okay.
The good news is you are consciousness, and consciousness can grasp or grab consciousness. That's the good news.
So is my consciousness going to grasp my mind?
Oh, the consciousness...
Not the opposite, right?
Yeah, it's a one-way street. Consciousness perceives the mind doesn't perceive consciousness.
Okay, yes.
But consciousness perceives itself. And you are consciousness. So you know that you are aware. You know that you are aware from direct experience. So you know that you are aware because you experience yourself as awareness or consciousness. You see? So that the problem is that we believe that we know that we are aware because we have a mind. In other words, because we perceive the world, the body, and thoughts. Mm-hmm. But that's not the case. We know that before we know anything else, we know that we are.
But not in the deep sleep or when I'm
Oh,
in
yes,
hospital.
always.
Mm-hmm.
We know that we are, and this knowing is very deep in us. It can never get erased.
Okay. And my second...
Because
yeah.
you know, awareness is self-evident. You see what I mean? Awareness is self-evident. In other words, we know that we are aware because we are aware and for no other reason. And, you know, there are not too many things that are self-evident in our experience. But this one is self-evident. We know that we're, you know, when a parent is tired after a child has asked many questions, you know, Dad, why this? Why are there birds? Because there are mommy and daddy birds. Oh, and where there are mommy birds? Because there are eggs. And why are there eggs? Because there are mommy birds. And why are there mommy birds? Because there are eggs. And why are there... And then you say, Fanny, the dad or the mom says, why are there mommy birds? Because. Yeah. And then all the next questions are answered with a final because, right? So, how do you know that there is consciousness? Because.
But for me, it's just I'm conscious of awareness, just like I'm this body, female, and just I'm aware of this small thing. I go to work, this is my house, this is my car.
Yeah,
that's all.
I'm
not aware of anything behind this.
Yes, but you are saying I am aware.
Yes.
So you are aware of being aware.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
You, awareness, is aware of being aware. Mm-hmm. You, awareness, know awareness. And what I'm saying is that we know that we are aware directly. We don't know that we are aware because we perceive objects. That's a belief we have. That's a belief almost everybody has. So it's a very fine point. You see, most people believe that they are aware, that they know they are aware because they are aware of objects, of stuff, of colors, of people, of birds, of houses, of dreams. They are not, how can I say? They have not discovered that in order to be aware of being aware, we don't need objects. We don't need the birds, the houses, the dreams, the thoughts. We know it directly. Any more that we don't need anybody to tell us. You know? If someone comes and tells you, you know you're aware. I have a great secret to tell you. You say, you say, well, thank you for the information, but I guess I already knew that. And I guess I've known that for a very, very long time, right? Do you remember the first time you were aware? It traces back way, way back, right? So we know that we are aware directly. That awareness is self-evident. You see, that's the thing. We don't know because they are objects. So it's like light seeing itself, you know. It's like being the light, creating the light, seeing the light, all in one single shot, instead of 3 shots, you know.
Yeah.
Being the light, creating the light, seeing the light. We also first you are the light, then you create light, then you see the light. No, it's all in one. And then you discover that this light also creates everything else. At least be open to that possibility.
And my next question is attention. Attention is the same as consciousness. Like where I put my attention right now, I'm not thinking, I don't see Japan, right? But I don't perceive it.
Mm-hmm.
So can we say that attention
Well,
is the same as consciousness, or?
There are 2 things. Let's say I am in the street and someone calls me on my cell phone. And there is noise in the street. In order to hear this person, I am putting my attention on the conversation, right? And so I use my brain as a filter to filter out the traffic noise, all of that stuff. So in this case, I say I am putting my attention on the conversation, right? It's a little bit different from here being here. I mean, not putting the attention on anything specific, you see, and okay, that's Temecula on some hilltop. Of course, it's not China. Yeah, sure. You see, but then there is no focusing on the attention which is required for that. So when you talk about attention, we have to make a distinction between unfocused attention and focused attention. So unfocused attention is witnessing the mind, simply. Right? It means to attend to the mind, to attend, right? To attend to... focusing the attention is a mind activity, is this filtering activity. It requires work. It requires effort, right? In both cases, it is the same consciousness which is aware of both the focused attention and the relaxed attention. You see, so the consciousness, the awareness, is behind and beyond the attention, whether the attention is focused or not unfocused. because it's the same. You see, whether I focus or not, it's the same presence, it's the same me, the same awareness, who is the witness of both the focused attention and the unfocused attention.
Thank you.
I'm trying to understand the substance and form, reality, unreality, in the context of the whole quantum theory and particles and waves. Is it fair to say that the quantum is reality and the particle is what forms the unreal world in front of our eyes, if you will?
I have a scientific background in physics and math, but I am not, it's not my field of expertise. First, physics has a limited scope, right? We have first to understand that physics first is limited to phenomena that are subjected to verification by peers, right? Therefore, phenomena that are subjected to the intersubjective agreement. That's the first limitation of science. The second limitation is that it kind of excludes one-of-a-kind phenomena, because let's say an outlier in an experiment which is not going to be reproduced in the lab by other peers is going to be discarded. If the Red Sea opens, right, which is possible, everything is possible, but it has remained closed since, right, as far as I know. So the opening of the Red Sea is not a phenomenon that would be of interest to scientists, at least not to physicists, perhaps to soft science, but to physicists I must tell you, I don't see that the opening of the Red Sea is of interest. So these are limitations, right? The most important is that consciousness, as I define it, the reality, is not within the scope of science. Science doesn't have as a goal to answer the question, what is reality? It doesn't have either as a goal to answer the question, why is there reality? Why, meaning either what's the cause or what's the goal, what's the purpose. That's not within. The goal of science is simply to answer the question, how? To find out the laws of nature and to find the most universally applicable law of nature. And right now, we have the two laws of nature in science, basically. And they kind of overlap on our scale, but they are at odds with each other when we move from our human scale either to the microscopic scale or to different energy scales. So then these two theories are at odds with each other, so we don't have a unified body of laws of nature. So these are the, but closing this parenthesis, science is very beautiful, is very useful, it's great fun for scientists to do research, but it has its limitation, and that's very normal. And I don't think that any bona fide scientist would challenge what I'm saying. The problem, however, is that I would say second-tier scientists or pseudo-scientists have forgotten those limitations and believe that science applies universally and answers all the questions, you see? And then, by doing so, they have moved from being a scientist to be a religious scientist, meaning that science has become your religion, believing that science can explain everything. And that's not possible. So the greatest scientists, they knew better. At least let's take the great physicists of the 20th century, the Diracs, the Fermi, the Schrödingers, the Heisenbergs. They knew the Pauli. They knew the limitations of physics. So, what is interesting, going back to your question, I don't think that, although there are interesting analogies between quantum mechanics and what we are talking about here, we have to understand that quantum mechanics is an interesting set of mathematical tools that enable us to take into account the laws according to which physical systems evolve. And they evolve in two different ways. One way is a continuous way, which is an evolution of what we call the amplitude of the wave function, but which is, in lay term, would be evolution of the probabilities of the outcome of a measurement which is going to be performed on the system. And the other form of evolution is a sudden one, when a measurement is actually performed on the system, where among the various possibility of outcomes, only one is going to be found. So that the entire system, in a sense, at the moment of the measurement, collapses onto a single state, what we call an eigenstate, a single state with a well-defined value for the measurement. So if we replace the word measurement with the word observation, when the system is not under observation, it's not well defined. Also, it is in a potential state where many outcomes are possible. When we actually observe the system, then only one outcome for a given observable actualizes. So this element of quantum mechanics can be transposed or used as an analogy for a metaphysical model in which the universe is not in a well-defined state. The universe and everything, the mind, everything, is in a potential state that gets actualized through perception. So, but tomorrow, quantum mechanics may be proven to be, and will be proven, I'm quite certain, to have been an approximation, and there will be a new theory that will be more satisfactory. And it is very well possible that this probabilistic and indeterministic view will be replaced by something more deterministic. Who knows?
Does the one word indistinguishable add anything to this discussion? In other words, the electrons and the particles are indistinguishable from one another. And so the second part of it is that the consciousness, your consciousness, my consciousness, there's only one consciousness. It's indistinguishable from each other. Does that change anything?
I think what is interesting in quantum mechanics is the fact that locality is being challenged. But here we are talking about physics. Locality is being challenged nowadays. It was challenged already by Einstein in the EPR paradox, then Bell, and later on Aspect, because I'm French, Aspect in France. There is another guy in America who conducted the same experiment. Verified that there are, let's put it this way, there are I will go too technical. There are no local hidden variables. So that there are interaction at a distance between elements of the world that cannot be explained by the local configuration of these elements. So there is a global aspect to the physical universe, which is very beautiful. You see what I mean? If you take two, let's say, to make a thought experiment, if you take let's say two electrons with opposite spins, so one is like that are created in one single event, and then they move apart from each other at great speed, and then they are in two different areas of the universe. In fact, as they move, they are not in this position where one is up and the other one is down. They are like that. They are in a quantum state which is not determined. Now they are very, very far away from each other. And when one observes the spin of one, and if one finds this one down, and a subsequent experiment will always find the other one up. And conversely, it's like if they had a private cell phone network to tell each other, by the way, I just got measured, by this cop on the for speeding, So I just got measured, and you better show the opposite measurement because that's the law. So it's very weird because before that we know that they are not in a well-determined state. We know that. So there is this non-local action at a distance that gives us the sense of the globality of the universe. Now, the indeterminacy is something else. For instance, you cannot measure the position and the speed or the momentum of a particle at the same time. So So, for instance, you cannot measure, as a result, the position and the energy of the particle, because you know the mass. So, in order to have a particle at zero energy, you should be able to squeeze it somewhere. But if it has zero energy, you know the energy, so you don't know where the particle is. On the other hand, if you know where the particle is, you don't know what the energy is. So that's what is called the 0 point particle. The 0 point particle, you split the thing in two, and you divide equally between the position. So you have a minimum energy, which 1/2 of h bar omega, and so the void in quantum field theory is not at zero energy. Perhaps I've said something stupid here, but I think it's kind of...
All right, thank you. Spinoza was easier to understand than that.
You pushed me into it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It went brainy.
I feel like since the retreat, I've been on a roller coaster. And I suspect that there are things coming up for me that that I'm allowing. And so, in my worst days, I find myself identifying with it, and then I catch myself and come back. My better moments, and I know there's no good or bad, but I feel like I'm making progress because I now know that I'm not my body-mind. And that has had all these ripple effects. And therefore I am awareness. And as soon as I go there, I find my thoughts stopping, which is amazing freedom, right? And it brings a lot of peace, and even joy. And so I'm realizing this because I negating my body-mind, or not negating, but everything that I've known up until recently has been through my body-mind, so that is how I process information and knowledge. And I'm wondering what it is to know in this awareness that I guess the question is there more to expect, or am I being greedy? Is this enough for me to continue?
The answer is, it is insufficient as long as the goal is something else than peace and happiness. But we realize more and more that the goal is peace and happiness, and that the rest doesn't matter. And then whatever you need to know, you will know it. But only, it's like in the military with classified information, on a need-to-know basis. On a need-to-know basis. You will know it on a need-to-know basis. It will come to you. So at the same time, even this residual frustration that you may have, you won't have it any longer, because on one hand, peace and happiness are the only things that matters. But in addition, would you need to know something, it will come to you. So, who cares about the rest? Who cares about knowledge you are not interested in and you don't need to know? You see? Because there are so many things to know. Look at Wikipedia. You know, you don't want to become a walking Wikipedia. The brain is too small.
So is that more of my body-mind conditioning, trying to complicate things, and rather than, to me it's kind of amazing that it's so effortless.
Yes, it's because we still have recipes for happiness. That if only I could know this, if only I could experience this, if only, you see? So this happiness is more simple than all the recipes for it that we have. So that which you connect through glimpses when you go back to this intuition you have that your real nature is awareness, not the body-mind. You go there, and it is not that we go there just to a place of thought. We go to a thoughtless place, but this thoughtless place is a happy place. So, but then the old habits, that's not the recipe I have for happiness. I need to know something, I need to experience this, so then we move out of it. But because every time we go there, we get a booster of happiness. The first time we go there, it's the immunization against misery. Then every time we go back there, we get a booster. You see? So that's... because you said, when I go there, I can feel happy, And what we have to understand is that the happiness we feel when we go there is not a self-delusion. That's very important. That we are not deluding ourselves. Because the people we can delude ourselves by dreaming, I dream that this guy or this girl is in love with me, whereas in fact she or he couldn't care less. It's one of the most common forms of delusion on the planet, So, and that of course doesn't lead to too soft a landing. It's a landing. It's more like an aircraft carrier landing. Here, no, because the happiness is causeless. That's the beauty of it. We are the source. We can never be separate from the source, So there will never be any hard landing. You see, it can only get softer and softer. But there will never be any hard landing. Because it cannot be taken away from us. And it is always available. It is always open to us. So when we move away from it, it's because we want to. because we want to explore other possibilities, etc., for happiness.
The revelation that came to me when I was in that space of peace was, wow, I'll never be bored again.
Yeah, it's sweet. It's a form of giving the ego a nice funeral, you know.
So then it's simply a matter of choice, whether you want to continue being conditioned or behaving through the body-mind versus going there and realizing awareness.
Yes, but if we have caught this virus, it will stay always with us, so it will just destroy all the residues of ignorance. What is important, as I often say, is to notice at a certain point that our life has taken a new turn, and that now it is converging towards peace and happiness and harmony. Now, many things can happen in our life because we have to learn a lot of lessons. We have to get rid of all kinds of attachments. Many things will happen. And it may be a little bit disorienting in the beginning.
Yeah, that's certainly been true, because after the retreat I've noticed almost being hyper attached to my feelings and thoughts.
Yeah.
It's almost become more sensitized.
If you take the metaphor of flying, you may encounter some turbulence, just to detach you from from sticky objects. Mahmoud, I'm getting more and more convinced that there is no experiential nor logical evidence that consciousness is limited by a body. The universal consciousness hypothesis seems more likely to be true with more experiential glimpses, as well as some philosophical/logical lines of reasoning that run in my mind from time to time. Yet, my life alternates between peace and ignorance. I will be peaceful for one day, and then ignorance will be triggered. Sometimes I can trace the trigger, sometimes not. mostly in the form of contractions in the body, but also sometimes as thoughts. The absurdity of ignorant thoughts is much easier to see, but it's not as easy with the ignorant bodily sensations. Is my investigation not thorough enough? Mahmoud, the real question would be, is my investigation not serious enough? And I feel that it is indeed serious. If it is serious, it is as thorough as it can be at any given moment. So don't worry about that. Say, Mahmoud, I've heard you many times say that most of modern art is not real art. It's not a matter to be laughed at. It's sad. So, I've heard you many times say that most of modern art is not real art. I'm reading a biography book about Einstein, and contrary to the notion of him being a super genius, my impression is that besides his talent, the key characteristics that made him a creative physicist are freedom and love for physics. He disregarded authority and was free to think his own way. As a physicist, do you think, I'm not a physicist, I'm I've been trained as a physicist, yes. Do you think what applies to modern art applies to science, mathematics too? Is the reason humanity is not producing new Einsteins or Eulers because many pursue these fields for personal benefits rather than freedom and true love? I don't think that's the case. I think there are many physicists and mathematicians that are really egoless, at least in the exercise of their profession. They are true physicists, they have true vocations, and it's that I don't know what the future of physics is. Physics is at a crossroad. We as I explained earlier on, we have two theories that are kind of at odds with each other on the infrared and ultraviolet range of the scale, and no reunion is in sight right now. A lot of energy has been devoted to string theory, and the experiments on supersymmetry have remained inconclusive. So now, but they are good physicists. It's just that physics is hitting a bump in the road. When we think about it, Einstein's theory of general relativity has a good interpretation. In other words, we have the math and we have the interpretation. On the other side, we have the math, but we don't have the interpretation. Well, the first discovery of Einstein with special relativity, he already had the experiment by, for instance, Michelson and Morley interferometer, and he had the Lorentz transformation, he had the math, but nobody had the interpretation. So he came up with a beautiful interpretation of relativity that then he expanded. I don't know who the new Einstein will be. We don't know when it will come up. It's like the law of rarefaction of prime numbers. We know when the last prime number was. We don't know when the next prime number will be. But as physics become more and more complicated, this big breakthrough perhaps will be more and more spaced out from each other in time. Just as a prime number become more and more rare as the count goes on. Sujata. I'm following up on my question last week regarding the statement, everything is made of consciousness. I understand how all perceptions are made of consciousness. You then pointed out that one should look at objects of perception to be made of reality, universal reality. This begs the question of what is universal reality? I see universal reality being matter, the granite-like aspect, and the laws of nature. Anything else? Well, you should include in it, in reality, consciousness. Because as far as I know, the law of nature in the current state of the affairs remain silent about consciousness, and they will be silent, they will remain silent, I guess, for the rest of the time. And because they are the law of nature, then they are not the laws of consciousness. For that simple reason, they are the laws of phenomena, and consciousness is not a phenomenon. So, besides the laws of nature and granite, matter, there is consciousness. So, universal reality has to encompass consciousness. Otherwise, if consciousness is left out of universal reality loses its universality. It stops being universal. So, then she goes on, since I am consciousness and I am reality, then I am matter and the laws of nature. I don't see how I can be that. Please explain. First, there is obviously interaction between consciousness and matter. Why? Because we perceive matter. So there is obviously interaction between consciousness and matter, and therefore they belong to the same reality. A common reality is the necessary background for any interaction. So then, the reality of consciousness and the reality of matter is the same. But remember that I define consciousness as the reality which is hearing these words right now. Now, I leave it to you as a homework to see for yourself, because I cannot prove it to you, that the reality of consciousness and consciousness are one and the same. Because I define consciousness as the reality that perceives. Because that is true to our experience. Why? Because it is obvious that there is an element of reality to perception. And I call consciousness the reality that perceives. So the moment consciousness is defined as reality, you see, the reality of consciousness and consciousness are the same. The reality of a reality is that reality. In other words, the reality of a reality is that reality. Because if it let's say A, and let's say you have two realities, A and B, and we say that B is the reality of A. It would mean that A is not a reality unto itself. It would mean that A is not a reality. B would be the reality of A. So if we claim that consciousness, if we define consciousness as a reality that perceives, it implies that it is its own reality. Consciousness is its own reality. Now, let's go back. We have said that consciousness and the world, in order for this perception to be possible, perception meaning interaction, have to have a common reality. So the reality of the world and the reality of consciousness is the same reality. Now, because the reality of consciousness is consciousness itself, it follows that the consciousness is also the reality of matter, if you will, and everything else, and the laws of physics and all the everything we don't know. Poor humans we are. Kirana, can you tell me about the significance of the head, heart, and hara from a non-dualistic perspective? The significance of the head, heart, and hara from a non-dualistic perspective. Hara. Head, heart, hara. That's very simple. From a non-dual perspective, they are one. No, I'm not serious. Okay. Let's try to be nice. The head would be the center of the intellect, of thoughts, the heart, the feelings, and the hara would be the unseen vital energy. You see the instinct, if you will, the source of instinct, what we do. The heart, the emotions, and the head, the center of thought. Now, the hara, there is nothing wrong with that. It is not distorted by ignorance. The vital energies of the body are there, the instincts are there. They are not distorted, but they may be coerced. They may be tamed, domesticated. The heart the emotions can be perverted by ignorance, and so are the thoughts. So once the head and the heart are pure, the hara has always been pure. The hara, which was the slave of ignorance, then becomes the servant of intelligence, the head, and love, the heart. Okay, that's it here. There is a message from Mary, but I don't understand, so I'm forwarding it to John. We are through here? No more questions? Thank you.